if not anything, is one of the most important things you can have writing a college essay. Okay, you got through it. This is going to let an admissions counselor know that you have the skills and the ability to get through a hard situation. College is not easy. It is worth it, but it's not easy. Hi guys, if you're new here, my name is Katara. I make lifestyle, beauty, and music videos. Today I wanted to talk about writing a college essay. 5 things that I think that will be very helpful for you writing a college essay. If you guys like this type of video, give it a thumbs up. And yeah, it means a lot. Shows you're supporting my channel, so I appreciate it. Starting at my first point, I named it story and perseverance. I say that because when you write a college essay, you really need to think about what type of story you want to tell the reader, right? Now, you may be the type of person who you've never really been into writing things out and you just don't like writing at all, but this is a time where you really need to use those writing skills. A lot of the time, students have questions about writing their essay. What do I do? Oh my gosh, I've never written stuff like this before. I'm really confused. So college essays, it's not required for every single college you go to, but it is important. It is an important step of the college process. And sometimes, even if you're applying to a job or to the military or anything like that, just having those writing skills to describe an experience, whether it was 4 years, 3 years, 5 years, you need that. So I wouldn't say it's the most important aspect of your application, but it is important. It really depends on where you're applying to. So let's say, for example, you're applying to Harvard, right? If you're applying to Harvard, your essay, it does matter, right? Because the pool for the Harvard students, it's much larger than it would be if you are looking at the pool of, let's say, for example, a college that's in your hometown, right? So in order to make yourself stand out, you really need to make sure that you develop that essay. There are some cases, though, which I do recommend this. There are some cases where colleges, an essay is not required at all whatsoever. So I do recommend applying to those colleges because you will have some sort of backup plan. I would say I thrive off stability. That's the best way to describe it. I thrive off stability. With that being said, I do recommend applying for colleges that you don't require an essay, but if you are interested in writing an essay and all of your college options you don't require an essay, but you're still not sure about where you want, I do recommend writing an essay because you never know, like, during which part of the school year your mind might change. You never know, like, what you'll think about in the future. Your mind might change about you want to go to, you end up having to write an essay. And let's say it's like, you know, February or January, and you've written that essay in September, you'll be very thankful. Moving on to writing a story and having some sort of perseverance. So when you write a college essay, I recommend having a story. So what I mean by that is, obviously you want to talk about like your extracurriculars, you want to talk about like your GPA if you did really well in school. You want to talk about those things, but you also need to tell some sort of story, right? That way it grabs the reader's attention, whether it's an admissions counselor or it's a reviewer, which we'll get into that a little later about what a reviewer is. If you're looking at your essay, they're not going to read it and just throw it off to the side, right? You want to grasp their attention. So it's really important that you have that story. A lot of the time students, they have questions about, okay, what exactly do you mean by a story? How to write a story? So a lot of the time I say that really is, think about something that has happened to you in the past that really affected your high school career, or let's say the beginning of your college career if you're a transfer student, or let's say your mom, let's say you're a stay-at-home dad and you just want to go to college, right? Think about something that really has affected you and how you've overcome that. So this is a method that I've made up, but this is what I recommend when you do write a story. So the first part I say, I'll put it up here on the screen, I'll say background. The second part is perseverance, and the third part is conclusion. So what I mean by background is tell them about yourself, which I know that can be one of the hardest questions you can be asked, especially if you're like a high school senior. You may not have any idea who you are, but you probably know your GPA, you probably know about your extracurriculars. So let me give you an example of how you can go into it. You can say, hi, my name is Susie Liu, and I go to such and such high school. During this time, I got a 3.5 GPA and I was involved in Beta Club in the jazz band. That's something that starts you out, and that just gives them a little background and know what they're working with, right? Now let's go on to the perseverance part. So now that we know that Susie Liu, or Susie May, I forgot what I named her. Now that we know that Susie Liu, she has a 3.5 GPA and she is involved in X, Y, and Z, Susie Liu, she needs to open up a little bit more. So let's say, for example, when she was in jazz band for those 4 years in high school, let's say there was a semester that she couldn't do jazz band and it affected her immensely. But towards the end of high school, she joined jazz band again. While she was outside of jazz band and she was taking a break, she realized how much she missed it and she realized how important it was to her. This is a really, really, really good example to use when you're writing an essay, because it lets the reader know that you have actually experienced something. You need to make sure you have some sort of conclusion. In your conclusion, talk about how you persevered and talk about how you got through the previous situation. This is going to let the reader or the audience member know that yes, although you had a hardship during your high school career, we'll use high school for this example for now, but although you had a hardship during that time, you persevered it, you got through it. This is going to let an admissions counselor know that you have the skills and the ability to get through a hard situation. College is not easy. It is worth it, but it's not easy. So if you exhibit those skills and you explain to them, you don't have to go into a lot of detail, obviously, if it's something that's very personal that you don't want to go into, but you can go into a little detail, but make sure you go into how you got through it. It's going to show them that, hey, this person, yes, they have a 3.5 GPA, yes, they have a 5.0 GPA, but they can also get through something like college. So the main point of an essay is to brag, brag about yourself. I always say, students, this isn't time to brag about yourself, but it's also time to show them that, hey, I am capable of getting to college. I am qualified of getting to college. Let me tell you something. It's one thing if you have, a high GPA and you have extracurriculars, but it's another thing if you haven't had as much extracurriculars and if you haven't explained to them some things that you've gone through, right? I think it's very important to make sure that you are involved in extracurriculars, because this is going to show admission counselors that you are capable of being involved in some. Now, here's the devil's advocate that I have to do in every single video, y'all, okay? So I know sometimes students, they genuinely cannot be involved in extracurricular activities, right? So let's say, for example, high school, you have a 5.0 GPA, right? But I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say that your mom was sick throughout high school, so you didn't have enough time to, or your parents don't have a car, right? So they couldn't take you to things. You can only take the bus, right? Make sure you talk about those experiences, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you're a high school senior, right? And you have a 5.0 GPA, but for some reason, let's say you have to take care of your mom or something like that. Because let's be realistic, not everyone can go to extracurricular activities. It kind of is a privilege, so I want to make sure I'm realistic. Say, for example, you weren't able to do those things, okay? What you can write about in your essay is what you did, right? So that is interesting enough in itself, right? So let's say you were taking care of your mom for 4 years. That means you develop the skills of taking care of someone. That means you develop the skills of consistency, right? So, yeah, and you can also say, yes, it was hard, but throughout that experience, I learned that taking care of my mom for those 4 to 5 years, I developed a skill of patience. I developed a skill of consistency. I developed the skill of asking questions and gaining knowledge, right, of what my mother needs. That That's a good one. That is going to show the admissions counselor that yes, although they did not do the extracurricular activities, I have an understanding as to why it does not say that on their resume or on their transcript or however they read it. However, they still were able to develop the skills that are needed for college. So the main point of the essay is making sure that you let admissions counselors know that you developed those skills that you need for college. Right? I would definitely say is needed for having a story and perseverance. Now, I need to make sure I apply with what I'm teaching. With that being said, let me tell you guys a story. So, one of my students is very lovely. I'm not going to say her name, but she was the salutatorian of the high school. And I was a reviewer for one of her essays. It was phenomenal, okay? It was one of the best written essays I have ever read for a student wanting to go into college. The reason why it was very interesting is because she had a story. So her essay was labeled The Second. So that means she was in second place. And she talked about her experience throughout high school and how she was the second. She wasn't first in class and how she persevered through that. But she still developed those skills and knowledge that she needed to get into college. She also, she talked about like her GPA, extracurriculars here and there. But she had a very consistent story, which is what needed. And she talked about those skills. Don't be afraid to talk a little bit about your experiences. The last thing that college admissions officers are expecting is perfection. They're expecting someone to stand out. So I think that will definitely help you stand out. Now, this is something you should not do. Don't do a sob story now. Do not do no sob story. Don't do that. That's a little too much. But do something that's like in between, like if you're an athlete and you had an injury and you had to be off for a semester, talk about that. Care for your mom for a little bit, talk about that. Things like that. I think college admissions officers, they will really appreciate that, and it'll definitely make you stand out. So I know that was a lot of information. To wrap this section up, I will say make sure you have a story, perseverance, and a conclusion. And also you can make sure you mention extracurriculars and GPAs. Now, the second point we're going to go over is authenticity. I put this on the list because it's very important to have when you're writing an essay. Quite frankly, these admission counselors, they have read a ton of essays and they can tell if you have been practicing this for 4 years. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show Never Have I Ever. Really good show. But I'm going to use this example. So in the show Never Have I Ever, Davy, I believe she was the valedictorian or salutatorian. She met an admissions counselor during a college fair. She had been planning for this for 4 years. And as soon as she went up to the admissions counselor, she had this huge script and she had everything. And she just went boom, boom, boom. She just laid it all out on the admissions counselor. The admissions counselor's reaction to her laying out how she was the valedictorian was kind of, how do I explain this? Sour, right? So with that being said, the admissions counselor, they saw how Davy was kind of inauthentic and they wanted more from her, which I really appreciated the situation. Long story short, which you guys can watch the show, the admissions counselor made Davy write an essay about something that she went through. So if you guys want to watch the show, Davy, she actually went through dad's death, and so she talked about that. So she talked about how she was valedictorian and all the things that she experienced in high school. She was a very intelligent girl, but something was missing, which she said in the essay. It was about how her dad impacted her high school career. So definitely make sure you have some sort of authenticity. If you feel like your essay is a little too uptight, it probably is. Okay? Now, that's not to say don't use big words. I do recommend using big words, but also use them if they're you. If you're the type of person, so for example, for me, I'm a word nerd. I love diving myself in books. So naturally, I'm probably going to use bigger words, right? But if you're not that type of person, yes, you can use a few words that are maybe above your vocabulary level, but don't overdo it, because think about it. If they were to ask you, so what did you mean by this? And you have no idea, right? Just make sure you authentically present yourself, but in a professional manner. You don't have to overdo it. I wanted to talk about extracurriculars and GPAs in specific. The reason why I put this on here is because a lot of the times I've seen a lot of essays where students, they'll only talk about that, right? Which I was talking about in the points before. You can talk about that, but don't only talk about that. Now, when you actually do talk about that, what do? Students that may ask, should I put my GPA? Should I not put my GPA? Should I put extracurriculars? Should I not put any at all? What do I do? My answer to that is it really depends on who you are as a person and what you've done in high school, okay? So let's say, for example, your GPS wasn't the best. I don't recommend putting in your GPA. Remember, the point of the college essay is to, yes, stand out and be authentic. So if your GPA is something that's not making the cut, do not put that in there. But let's say your GPA was like a 3.0 or something like that, right? And most of the students who get into the program you're interested in, they have like a 3.2 or something like that. You could put that in there, but you could also leave it out. That would really be dependent on to you. I know that some students, they wonder, should I use all of the extracurriculars or should I just use a few of them? My advice is write out all the extracurricular activities that you've done. And yes, you can list them in your essay, but only choose maybe 2 or maybe 3 of the extracurriculars to talk about in detail, right? So let's say, for example, you were involved in beta club all 4 years and you're involved in basketball all 4 years. But sometimes here and there, depending on what school year it was, you went to anime club, maybe here and there, but you don't know too much about it, but you just went there to go watch anime during an anime party and you just put that on your resume, right? Let's just say that's what happened, okay? List all 3. But talk about in detail the 2 most important things to you, the 2 things that showcase you the most, right? So if you're a basketball player, right, you probably have a lot of perseverance. You probably have a lot of consistency. You probably have a lot of really good skills that you need to be in college, right? Or just in anywhere in general, right? So I definitely recommend just talking in detail about just maybe 2 or 3 points. Keep it short and sweet. Don't overdo it, because if you do take the route of having a story, you don't want to write too much. So I would say maybe keep your essay about maybe like two pages. Keep it about 2 pages, 2 to 3 pages, and you'll be good. Now, you may be wondering, how do I write about this in detail? Everyone knows what basketball is. Why do I have to tell people what basketball is? Are y'all dumb? Why do I have to do this, right? Talk about how basketball or anime club, how that impacted you during your high school career. Don't just say, yeah, I went to anime club and we watched this anime and we watched Death Note and all that. You can say that in short, but say, when I went to anime club, you know what? As someone who's coming in as an animation major, I realized that the graphics and animation on here are really well done. And this is why I'm interested in animation design or UI and UX design, because anime club showed me to have appreciation for animation. There you go. Okay, so make sure you talk about how it has impacted you, not just what you did. So the next point I have on here is your why and how you fit into the school's culture, but we'll just call it your why for short. So the reason why I put this on here is because when you're writing an essay, which just ties into the other points as well, make sure you tell them your why. So make sure you apply the reason why you're interested in this major or the reason why you're interested in this major to your essay. So let's go back to the animation club, right? Or the student who's interested in going to school for animation, right? They can talk about, yes, I was involved in anime club and this is why and this is how it's impacted me. But I'm also interested in being an animation major because ... because I saw how these characters were animated and they look like me, or I feel like a lot of the characters in animation, I feel like I can help out with that. I feel like I have, a twist to to contribute to school's culture. The point of doing this is to make sure you have the admissions counselor envision how you fit into the school's culture. Okay, so make sure you tell them your why. Why are you applying to be an English major? I don't know. Well, that's not good enough, you know. No, then you should probably figure out why. Another thing, just make sure you can talk a little bit in very briefly talk about like how you feel like you will fit into the school's culture, which that can be literally wrapped up into like 1 or 2 sentences about your why. I'm interested in becoming an animation major because I really love how animation makes the audience feels. I feel as though I am a good contribution to the school because I have a broad perspective of animation based off of my knowledge from Animation Club. Make sense? Okay. All right, this video is ending, y'all. But the last point I have is I'm aiming at reviewer, okay? This, if not anything, is one of the most important things you can have writing a college essay, okay? It's one thing bragging about yourself, just for this one time though, stay humble. Bragging about yourself. Oh, I got a 5.0 GPA. Oh, I got a 2.75 GPA. But it's another thing of having someone to review it. I will say having a reviewer, it kind of builds your character in a sense, because if you, all throughout your 4 years, if you haven't gotten a lot of like constructive criticism, this is probably one of the first instances in life that you'll have that. So I do recommend having a reviewer, if not one, I would say multiple. So an example of that is maybe like your teacher, your college advisor, or like your student advisor, whatever they call it, someone like me, librarian, whoever, someone that impacted you greatly during your college experience, mom, dad, anyone, not anyone, but someone that's of great importance to you. I will have them read over it. Now, I do recommend having someone who is very blunt and honest, also cares about you and your experience deep down. And I also recommend someone who sees like the good in things as well. I think it'll be very helpful because it'll help you grow and change. When I review students' essays, a lot of the time I am very honest about what's going on, but I also make sure I cover the really good points of things. So like if she's an excellent writer, but she forgot to mention, a couple extracurricular activities and she really needs to get on that to showcase her abilities even more, I'll say things like that. I really think it's helpful because the last thing you want is someone who is not really honest with you and they're just like, yeah, it looks great. I expect nothing else out of the best of y'all, so make sure you get someone. If y'all want it, DM me or email me your essays, let me know. I'll probably review a couple if I have time, but nothing less than the best. So make sure you pick someone that really is going to help you. If someone just looks at it and they say, oh yeah, this is great, maybe you can follow up and say, okay, I know it's great, but is there something else you recommend that I add or that I take off before I finalize this essay, right? So just make sure you get someone that's really realistic. This concludes 5 things that are helpful or I wish I knew before I'm writing a college essay. We'll see what I'll make the title, but this concludes the video. I had fun. Let me know if you want a part 2. I can definitely do that. If you have any questions, link them down, or not link them down. If you have any questions, put them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for y'all. But for now, till next time, bye.